Good morning, Lisa. Can you hear us?
Oh, I'm muted. Sorry, she cannot hear us if we're muted.
Lisa, can you hear us?
I can hear you now. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Perfect.
Good morning. Were you talking to me?
Yep, we can hear you now. Thank you.
I don't know. I just was saying hello to anybody who might be able
Okay.
to.
So I can't, for some reason, my school computer, the audio won't work at all. So I'm
Oh.
rebooting my computer. I just joined on my phone and
Okay.
I'll try again and see if that works.
Okay.
But I can hear you.
Okay, good. And I can hear you. So I don't see anybody else on. Let me see if Eric is trying to text about anything. Nothing.
I think I saw that she was.
Okay.
No chats.
Okay.
We're ready whenever you two are ready.
Oh, okay,
Okay.
great. Thank you. Sorry, I couldn't see anything else, so I didn't know who was here and what was going on. So my apologies. So excuse me. Good morning, everybody. I would like to call this meeting to order. The time is 8:32 a.m. Welcome to a hybrid study session of the Board of Trustees of the St. Helena Unified School District. Today is Wednesday, December 6, 2023. I am Lisa Pelosi, Board President, and I would like to introduce my fellow trustees by roll call vote. Please respond with "here" after your name is called. Board Vice President, Mrs. Jeannie Kerr.
Here.
Clerk to the Board, Mrs. Laura Simon.
Here.
Trustee, Miss Sean Mora.
Here.
And Trustee, Miss Jean Marie Wolf.
Here.
I would also like to introduce a district staff, Superintendent Ruben Aurelio.
Good morning,
Assistant
everyone.
Superintendent, Mr. Christopher Heller. Chief Business Official, Dr. Kay Vang. Executive Assistant to the Superintendent and Governing Board, Miss Erica Madrigal. Director of Technology, Mr. Derek Machado. Excuse me, Director of Facilities, Mr. Joe Perez. Senior Lead Maintenance Specialist, Mr. Kyle Davis. Additional site administrators are joining us this morning. St. Helena High School Principal, Mr. Benjamin Cinto. RLS Middle School Principal, Mr. Andrew Ryan. St. Helena Elementary School, Dr. Carmen Emery. And St. Helena Primary School Principal, Miss Rebecca Rocha. Thank you for joining us in person via Zoom or watching us on YouTube. A copy of this meeting will be available at www.sthelena.unified.org. Thank you, everybody, for your understanding and flexibility in pivoting this meeting to a hybrid today. Very appreciative of that, of all the work that went into that. Item number 2 is approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda for the meeting this morning?
I'll make a motion to approve this morning's agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Ms. Madrigal will conduct a roll call vote, please.
Trustee Wolf?
Aye.
Trustee Mora?
Aye.
Trustee Simon?
Aye.
Trustee Kerr?
Aye.
President Pelosi?
Aye, motion carried. If you would join me in Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we are now going to move on to the part of the meeting today, which is all about facilities, and I'm going to ask Dr. Vang to take it from here, please.
Thank you, President Pelosi. Good morning to everyone and happy Wednesday. For today's board study session, we will continue with our facilities planning and funding. And the district has several partners that we have been working closely with. That includes from King Consulting, Jamie King Eisman, April Thompson. Also, we've been working with Casa Studio, Trent Summers. And then from Great Stone West, we have two two of our construction managers here with us. We have John Delana and Christy Janowski. In the audience, we also have our energy consultant, Gopal Shankar, with Recolt Energy. These are all the different partners that the district has been working closely with in addressing our facilities needs. And so our partners will be helping me with our presentation today, providing the board with our facilities plan, including funding, possible funding sources, and we are open to questions and comments today. In fact, I have a parking lot poster here behind me, so if there are questions, there are some likes, some aha moments, things we're pondering about that we would prefer to write down and have the team address later, we are more than happy to do that. And without further ado, I will hand this over first to Jamie, I believe.
Oh, thank you. All right, we'll see if I can work it. Good morning. Superintendent Aurelio, board members, I apologize sincerely that we were late. Last time I was here was in 2008 when we got you the money for the CTE Ag building. So I thought I knew where I was going. But we're really happy to be here today to share some exciting information with you. Down arrow, you said? Got it. I'm going to go ahead and jump out really quick and hand it over to Greystone West. They're going to talk a little bit about the work that's been completed, just a really quick agenda, kind of where you've been, where you are at right now, what your funding opportunities are, and where you're headed. And without further ado.
All right, thank you. So I know I've been up here lately giving you some of the bad news of some of the things that we've been seeing. I wanted to take a moment at the beginning of this meeting and let you know some of the good things that have happened throughout the last 10, 11 years in the previous bonds, as well as through other funding sources. Starting at the primary school comprehensive HVAC upgrade, we removed a failing hydronic system. It was heat and cooling. Installed a more efficient VRF system that allows for greater control of temperature and ultimately a greater comfort for the occupants. Addition of a shade structure in 2016, and then we did a campus-wide paint and dry rot repair in 2014. At the elementary school, the asphalt shingle roofing just completed, doing the warranty walks as we speak. Flooring at rooms 1 through 6. Interior painting of selected rooms in 2019. Did your kitchen and cafeteria upgrade, where we gutted the entire kitchen. It was a small kitchen, it was unusable. There was a failing walk-in box for the refrigeration. Gutted all of that, gave you a new system, a little bit more easier for the kitchen staff, and then better serves the entire school. Playground in 2016, and then a door and window project at the main building in 2016 as well. That was replacing the single pane windows with double pane windows, allowed for better fenestration, less air coming through, and better waterproofing as well. RLS, the track and field, not yet complete, but headed that way, and with some dry weather, we'll be able to get that to you sooner than later. But that is something that we did want to highlight here. It's going to be beautiful when it's done. Interior painting, did that at selected areas in 2019. There was a modernization that included the band room, the multi-purpose, the life skills, practice rooms, lunch shelter, shade canopies, courtyard improvements, restroom facilities. The kitchen and library were converted and converted the storage to the student store. That was done in 2012 and 13. Then you had your modular classrooms and restroom buildings at the front of campus. 5 classrooms with an art room. Then at the high school, new roofing at the building. I think you can see them walking the roof right now with the manufacturer for the warranty. Hall of Fame just completed. Just completed and dedicated. Remodeled room 209 and 103 this last year. Redid the scoreboard a couple years ago in 2020, as well as the press box. at the football field. Tennis courts, redid 5 tennis courts, new nets, new fencing, new surfacing. Performing Arts Center, that was a 20,000 square foot facility. I think it houses 370 seats. It's got a fixed stage with your theatrical lighting, drama classrooms, and then adjacent offices. Science building modernization in 2015. Your new, as of 2014, 37-meter swimming pool for competition events. CTE construction, the ag mechanics, the floral design, the culinary arts in 2012, and then field house construction. This is not an entire list of all of the projects, it's just a highlight of some of the small, medium, and larger projects that we've done, or that you have done. Turning it over to Trent.
Thanks, John.
Yep.
Thank you very much. My name is Trent Summers. I'm the principal architect of Casa Studio. And as we kind of celebrate the victories that you guys have had in the past years, we're going to also kind of look forward to some of the challenges you're facing, but also the opportunities that you're facing. And we wanted to start with kind of a primer on K-12 construction, right? We wanted to walk through a couple basic questions of cost and time and schedule, because those are sort of the 3 variables that we're always trying to manipulate to have a successful project, right? If the scope of a project is aligned with the budget of the project and the schedule, then we'll have initial success. So one of the things that we kind of wanted to start talking about first are the budgets and the schedules, right? And we're just going to answer a couple basic questions. The first question we're going to talk about is, why does it take so long? You'll start to see some of these numbers, and I know that you have lived through a lot of construction, and one of the things that always commonly comes up is, why does this take forever to build, right? We do some very, very incredibly sophisticated construction, much more than we have with other industries like residential or commercial construction, right? And because we do that, we have a numerous amount of state and local agencies that want to speak into that, right? I'll tell my clients that there's an alphabet soup. There's DSA, OPSC, CDE, CGS. If you want to put 3 letters together, I'll give you the name of that governmental agency and tell you how long it takes to review these things, right? Because this takes so long, it really does take a while to build these buildings. So from initiation to construction, we want to start looking at what a realistic timeline is. So as we move forward and as we start to talk about needs, we want to understand how long that's going to take. And so what we have here is a sample case study for just a small modernization project, right? And we're looking at the different phases, and below each one of those phases is how many months we'd associate with that. So if you were to say, John, go out and modernize this building wing for me, realistically, you're looking at 15 months from letting him move forward with that project to completing that project, right? So when we start to talk about future needs, always understand that if you were to tell us to start today, we're more than a year out of even the simplest project. Those CDE projects, I think Jamie said she was here in 8 awarding funding. John's completing them in 12. That's sort of the pace that we move at. So there's really an understanding that to do next year's work, we're already a little bit behind, and to do the following year's work is right about when we need to start thinking about that, right? So we just kind of want to get you in the right mindset as to when we need to start giving our go, no-goes, with an understanding that the teams that are going to have to take care of this work need that time frame to work in, right? So those are when we start talking about realistic schedules, the ideas that we want to kind of keep with us, right? The second question that everybody loves to talk about is, why the heck does this cost so much, right? We'll come back with numbers of 1,000 a square foot, 1,200 a square foot, and these are starting going, these are unrealistic costs, right, for these buildings that we're building and much higher. We want to kind of understand that with complete transparency, it is incredibly expensive, right? But why is it incredibly expensive? We have higher labor costs, right? You'll pay prevailing wage, you'll pay skilled and trained labor, right? So you have labor costs that far exceed traditional construction based on the contracting mechanisms that you have to work within. The state requires that. You also have a higher material costs. You are building, right, the second safest building in the state. You know, maybe hospitals are much more important, right? And those are the ones that are a bit more critical. But second only to like those and fire stations, buildings that have to exist to serve the public, then you fall right below those, but not very far, right? We have a consultant that we like to work with, and she'll say the hospitals birth them and then they give them to the schools, and those buildings need to be equally as safe. Right? So you have to understand that we just use more expensive materials. The steel has to be thicker, the concrete has to be deeper, the materials that we use have to be safer, so they're more expensive. And then we have thorough construction oversight. That alphabet soup of agencies that I showed you doesn't just end at approving the plans, right? They want to come and look, they'll always come back. You'll hire an inspector to prove to the state that you built it the right way. You'll bring in testing labs, right, to make sure that all of the materials that you use have been certified and graded to secure the safety that we need. So when you start to talk about more expensive labor, more expensive building materials, and more expensive oversight, those numbers quickly add up and really kind of distort and push past the numbers that your community is probably typically used to seeing. So understand that yes, while these things, when we present them to you, seem much longer than they should, or maybe much more than they should, it's traditional, it's not traditional, it's seen throughout the state of California, right? And it's consistent. So the numbers that you see and the numbers that we are going to present to you are consistent throughout the state. We do this work from the southern borders of San Diego all the way up to, I think, Hayfork is about as far as I've gone, and they're consistent across the state because every single school is held accountable to the exact same contracting laws and state oversight as you are. So it's not something that's unique to you. Sadly, it's unique to the state in the process, but we will help you proactively plan to meet both of those schedules and those budgets to assure successful projects. Before we kind of move on, I know that's kind of a shotgun approach to why it takes so long and why it costs so much. Are there any questions that you kind of like to ask as before we jump into kind of what we see and where we're at? Okay. Owen?
Possible. Am I there? The DSA, I know your example was exactly just that. It was at one point like a 6-month wait with DSA. I saw your example timeline said 3 months. Are we somewhere still in that realm of 3 to 6 months?
It depends on the sophistication of the project, right? And so for the example that we showed, that was a simple modernization. And I'll pop myself back here. Right now, if we were to say put in an HVAC upgrade or a simple modernization, we will see those turn times in sort of 3 to 4 months. If we were to look at the sophistication of a project of say your CTE buildings where you're doing multiple new buildings of new construction, that will take a little bit longer. But as we understand your current needs and desires, you're looking more along these timelines that we presented here, which is why we brought this example. So you should expect for the projects that we're going to be discussing today, about a 3 to 4 month wait at DSA right now.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
When we use the like the state facilities fund, I think that or emergency funding or something. I mean, I'm sorry that I don't know the name. How long does it take for us to get that money? Then, what is kind of the reimbursement for that?
I'm going to bring in my industry expert here to answer that question for you and pass that back over to Jamie.
All right. Thanks. That's a very good question. All of these things are aligned, right? So it really depends on the project. So for example, and it's Jamie King-Eisman, president at King Consulting. I haven't been here in a while, so as a reminder, we're a small firm of 6 subject matter experts located in Sacramento, and we've been supporting your district with state funding for many, many years. So the facility hardship project, for example, that's the roof on Vintage Hall. Those projects are health and safety threats to students and staff at the school, so they're immediately moved to the front of the line. Other projects, like the modernization project that Trent was talking about, are FIFO, they're first in, first out. So as soon as we have a DSA approval and a CDE, a California Department of Education approval, we put those in line, and then it sits in line and waits to get picked up. You're getting in line behind everyone else who's gotten in line. So it depends on the program and the project. Some timelines are project specific. We like to say there's the accelerated timeline and then there's the normal timeline. For modernization projects right now, because of the general fund allocation into the SFP program in the absence of Prop 13, unfortunately numbered, not passing in 2020, the general fund moved enough money over to kind of cover almost everyone who was in line, and it really shortened the processing time. So it went from about 5 years to about 2 years now from the time you submit an application and then they pick it up. So it's more likely for projects that are modernization or new construction or that have those FIFO requirements or that normal timeline, that you're probably going to do your project and then get reimbursed by the state for those funds. You don't have to. You can get your DSA and CDE approvals. You can submit and you can wait for your application to get picked up, get the state funding, and then do your project. It's a district decision.
So it sounds like it right now, like between 2 or 3 years then?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
great. Thank you.
Uh-huh. Not right now. We'll talk about it in our...
Okay. Excellent. And so just kind of wrap up this sort of why does it cost so much process, you're going to start to see a lot of big numbers thrown around, and sometimes there's going to be differences in those numbers between total project costs and construction costs, right? And so what's important to understand is that your construction cost is the amount of money you're going to pay your contractor, right? And that includes the actual construction cost, which is the cost of anything that is assembled into your building. Right? If you can take a building, turn it upside down and shake it out, whatever is left are the construction costs of in-place materials. But your contractor also going to charge you some general conditions, and that's the work or the items that are kind of required to do the work, right? The temporary facilities, the restrooms, the overhead, all of that kind of stuff. Those are monies due to the contractors, right? The other thing that's going to kind of drive some of the scope of work up and that we're always going to be really, really conscious of is when we go into existing campuses, we're going to make sure that we include some money for the required ADA upgrades. Every single one of your projects is always going to require, unless you are so far down the line of working on these campuses, some sort of ADA upgrade. You know, they're always going to be kind of going in and reworking the parking lot or working a ramp or fixing a bathroom or doing these things because the state has an initiative to constantly make sure that accessibility for all is included in those projects. So you'll see all of those costs. And then, so that those three sort of boxes to the left, those are going to be the monies that you give to your contractor, right? The box on the right is going to be the difference between the construction costs or the contract amount and your total project account. And this is sort of where all of the why do we have to pay these things live, right? These are the funds that have to go to your states for reviews. These are the fees that you pay your architects and engineers. These are the fees that you pay your inspectors and your labs and all of those things that just kind of are associated with the administration of those projects. So it's none of the costs that go into actually the built environment, but more the administrative costs that kind of come along with association with those projects. So when John brings to you project costs, he'll bring sometimes contract amounts and then total projects. Just understand that those numbers are both equivalent and one will include the soft costs and one don't. And usually John's very good about explaining the difference between that because we always want to make sure we're very, very transparent with our costs when it comes to dealing with numbers because we never like to come back and beg for more. Okay, now, one of the things that we did, or my company did for you back in 2015, was a facility assessment of all of your campuses, right? We did a deferred maintenance plan. We kind of ran my team through with some engineers, a team of architects, and looked at all of your facilities, square foot by square foot. We broke it down to the room level, right? We have a database built of your school district that is down to each room with the finishes in them. So we know that this room has carpet on the floor and it has, suspended, or it has a little bit of acoustic tile and on and on and on. We then aligned that with the installation dates if we could find them, right? So that we knew how much of any material that you had and when it was installed and what the estimated useful life for that material is, right? And we projected that out, 20 years, and then took a section of it that's 10 years long and said as of 2015, in these next 10 years, this is the amount of work that you'll likely need to do for deferred maintenance, right? This is the amount of money required to keep the kids warm, safe, and dry. It's not the amount of money required to replace the buildings, right? It is the amount of money required to keep the buildings operated as designed and safely maintained, okay? When we took that cross section in 2015, we were looking out to 2025, and you had right around $13 to $16 million worth of need. We came and we presented that to the board, and in between then, everybody understands that there was COVID, right? So we had some things that happened that have led us to understand that we need to think about it in a little bit bigger number, right? One of the things that we have seen, and we kind of jumped to the last bullet point I forgot there, but is a 44% increase on in-place construction costs through COVID, right? So everyone is talking about how escalation is hurting everybody. We have seen a 44% increase in those years alone. Right? It destroyed your buying power. It destroyed everybody's buying power. But what that's really done is made us say, we need to sit back and think about reassessing those numbers and looking at those true today cost dollars in today's dollars. Another thing that we need to think about is this assessment window that we did was only 10 years long, right? We went from 2015 to 2025, and we are now, if we were going to be proactive and looking out 10 years, need to look 10 years forward from today to really sort of capture what your facility assessment needs are, because one, more work has come into that window that we need to address it, right? As every year marches on, things that we weren't sort of considering in that 10-year plan, the things in the 11th and the 12th and the 13-year plan, now come into our view where we need to actively assess those and think about those. So one of the things that we're kind of talking about and looking for support in is sort of reassessing your deferred maintenance needs, right? Let's update that facility with today's dollars to account for that additional 44% that we've seen through COVID. And then let's reassess that window to make sure that we're looking 10 years into the future so we can capture everything we need to look at to make sure we have those facilities that meet the needs and the requirements of the amazing students that you teach here. Is there any questions about that? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Has that changed? Has it improved?
Some things have and some things haven't, and that's probably about the most architect answer you could ever get, right? So when we were in the middle of the pandemic, lumber went through the roof, right? Like, we can't get we can't get it anymore. And now that has kind of settled down, but as the war in the Ukraine has continued to go on, petroleum-based products are still through the roof, right? When lumber came down, I think all the steel manufacturers said, hey, it's our turn to get it, and so you'll start to see these things bounce back around, and I think John will talk a little bit more about that now.
Yeah, so we are seeing some improvements depending on what it is, but for like HVAC units, some of the bigger units now are 20 to 25 weeks. Those were up to like 40 weeks before. Switchgear still over 60 weeks, 40 to 60 weeks kind of thing. That used to never be the case, but we haven't made up that time yet. So it's hit and miss a little bit.
Okay. I have a question for you. So this 10-year plan, just rough estimate, how much of this was actually accomplished going back to 2016? Because it looked like 3 million in 2016. It varied between 3 and half a million each year. I'm just curious how much of this was actually taken care of.
I think a lot of it was, or not a lot of it, some of it was, we definitely addressed the kitchen issue at the elementary school, right? We've started to do some of the roofing work. It would be a matter of kind of saying, okay, let's see where we're at now, and let's just look back and assess what we've done. I mean, John presented a couple slides of a lot of really great work. What did that knock off? And so certainly as we escalate and as we look out further, we would capture everything we've done and the great work you've done since then. But that's kind of the idea of why we're sitting here saying we'd like to kind of take a pause, catch our breath, reassess this to make sure we knock off everything we've done and that great work you've done, but also really make sure we look forward with eyes wide open with current costs today. Anything else? Okay, so I'm going to hand this back over to John, and John's going to talk a little bit more about the future needs that he sees in your campuses, and then we'll pass that along to Jamie to start talking about some money.
All right. So you've seen a lot of these items before. We're still going through doing our assessments. We're going to go back over the winter break and hopefully complete that task, as well as come up with some pricing on some of the things that we're seeing. Much of it's focused on warm, safe, and dry, though. Solar, renewable energy, looking to enhance the audiovisual system throughout the district. Replace the outdated clock bell public address system. It's a bit of a mix and match throughout the campuses. Fire alarm systems are up to current standards, including voice evacuation. It's the new code. I think some of the fire alarm systems are several codes old. Upgrade and replace your security system. I know not all of the security system is working in working order. Repair some of the damaged and failing asphalt and restriping. Seems to be throughout the entire district. Obviously improve some ADA path of travel and correct the hazards. And then comply with current ADA requirements for classroom sinks and single-use restrooms. A little more site-specific. The primary school need to repair the sinking turf and subgrade at the play structures. We talked about that at some of the previous meetings. Repair the existing dry rot and painting. Have a photo up there to the right showing you some of the dry rot. I think the building was painted in 2014, if I'm not mistaken. There you have some damaged fencing and pickets at the outdoor learning areas. Single pane windows. Talked about some of that before, in which double pane windows will help with the air intrusion and help with your energy efficiency, as well as leaking. And then replace some of the leaking roofing and gutters, or some rusting on the gutters. Removing some of the outdated 23-year-old portables. Looking at those, they look beyond repair at this point. Not a good idea to put too much money into portable buildings. Replace inefficient irrigation and planting beds. Maybe changing that to a drip irrigation system. Modernize interiors where you have some wallpaper that's failing. Some of the interiors need to be repainted. Construct a fenced trash enclosure, consolidating the trash. And then upgrading some of the door hardware. There was a previous phase that took care of some of it, but this would complete that activity. The elementary school, Replace the roofing at the low slope roofs and install drainage where necessary. You see in the photos and that we've see here, as well as some of the previous presentations. You have ponding water, you have roof stains, active leaks. Modernize the classrooms. That's paint, cabinets, finishes. Upgrade the lighting. Some of those classrooms have some of the old fixtures do have LED lighting in there. I think it's done as part of your Prop 39, but they are older fixtures. Some of them aren't braced properly. Repair basement drainage and ventilation. HVAC units at the high school. There's 20. I think there's 27 units that are at the end of their useful life, so those need to be replaced. We do expect that you will start to see some failures coming pretty soon with those. Repair the basement drainage and ventilation. We all know that there's some flooding down there. We've already started some investigation on the existing systems there. Repair the failing utilities. Replace single pane windows to improve the energy efficiency. Restroom upgrades. Trash enclosure. The trash is spilling into the play area, so consolidating that and keeping it away from the students. Upgrade the exterior lighting. That's been reported to us that the exterior lighting is inadequate. We have not had an opportunity to check that in the dark, but that is something we will do. Install a well for irrigation water. Install the auditorium ADA. Improve the driveway at the rear of the kitchen. It's failing. And then upgrade the irrigation to correct some of the restricted flow at the front lawn. At RLS, you have some single pane windows. Need to replace those for energy efficiency. They're also leaking at the gym, so we need to get that corrected. Replace some of the failing domestic water lines. Those are underground lines, as well as some exposed lines. Leaking roof, gutters, downspouts. Coming up on needing a paint job for that site. Again, irrigation, due to restricted flow, need to increase the efficiency. Install a well to provide the low-cost water for the landscape. I understand there was a well there at one time before, so we need to investigate that. Cosmetic upgrade at the multipurpose and locker rooms. The multipurpose room doesn't look like it's been upgraded in quite some time. And then the basketball standards at the outdoor courts. The outdoor courts in general, with water permeating below the surface, seems to be creating quite an issue there. At the high school, you have aging turf at the fields. I do know that some was replaced recently. Usually that's a 10-year lifespan. Repair and replace failing sanitary sewer line at the art classroom. You have some asbestos-containing flooring tile. We need to replace that and put in some new flooring. Modernize the classrooms, paint, cabinets, finishes, and upgrade the lighting. Single pane windows, you do have a wing where I believe it's a 300 wing, where it's all single pane windows and plexiglass. Paint and dry rot repair, upgrade some of the door hardware. You have old bleachers at the football field. Need to get some ADA accessibility in there. Refresh the locker rooms. HVAC, it's been reported that the HVAC at the gymnasium needs some attention. Something else we will look at. ADA accessibility and renovation at the administration restroom. Repair and replace some of the failing drainage at the quad. And then remove the portables at the football field. Again, those are dated and beyond repair at this point. So we will turn it back over to Trent.
I think that's the end of the overwhelming, depressing part. No, I think one of the things that we really wanted to bring to attention is just sort of getting on all the clay on the wheel, right? Because at this point, now we kind of have an assessment of where we're at and what our needs are, and we really want to look into proactive planning. And I will start by saying we do this in school districts across the state. Every single school district we walk into, the need far exceeds the funding available. Right? So you are not in any position that is unusual or unheard of, right? So the key is to really say, how do we assess the need, and then how do we begin to proactively plan, right? We like to approach this by setting realistic goals that aren't based on my opinions, Nobody wants your architect to walk into your boardroom and say, I really think you guys should do this, right? We want to always work back our assessments, our project goals to quantifiable, defendable analysis so you can then take that out to your community and move forward with internal decisions with confidence. What we would suggest, right, is really sort of casting that broad net that John's highlighted in some of the deferred maintenance we talk about and bundling those into projects, right? There is an economy of scale if we can tie these things together and then start to look at them based on the goals of the board and the district, right? Frequently we come to districts and these are the list of goals that we have, right? We currently see that they want to prioritize projects to keep kids warm, safe, and dry, right? We'll always go and look at state mandates. You know, there's always something new coming down from the state that says, hey, take care of this, right? We look at immediate funding, right? If Jamie can find us money, that really helps us, right? Because then we can start to stretch our dollars and fight that escalation. We look at your district priorities. If you come to me and say, Trent, it's essential that we start to do this for our students, we'll weigh that in as well. And then we look at kind of classrooms and ancillary facilities, right? Frequently, we kind of get lost in the idea of, well, schools are just classrooms, right? No, schools are much more than classrooms. When you start looking at the multi-purpose rooms, like where these enrichment spaces happen. And we can also kind of look into that to make sure that you have those needs. We also want to look at campus equity, right? You know, and communities want to make sure that someone's not going, hey, this school gets all of this while this school doesn't, so we'll balance that. And then we'll look at deferred funding available, right? $1 tomorrow is still good. It's not $1 today, but it's something we definitely need to think about. And then any special conditions, right? If you have community partners or develops or district partners, if someone comes to you and say, hey, if you do this, I can come along and help you, frequently we'll look into that too, right? Our goal is to, as I said, take all of these projects, put them on a list, and then help you make informed decisions, right? And our idea would be to come back with sort of a proactive planning tool for you where we just lay out your district goals, right across the top to make a rubric, and then assign point values to them, you know? How important is it on a scale of 1 to 10 or each one of these are 1 to 20, right? And then we'll list all of your projects, right? And then we can kind of go through with very simple yes, no's, assign values to them, you know? Is this something that'll help keep kids warm, safe, and dry? Yes. Is it a state mandate? Yes. And you'll start to see that quantifiably certain projects will raise above other projects, right? And that's going to help you start to make informed decisions that when your community comes back to you and say, hey, why are you guys doing this? You're like, hey, look at my rubric. This is how it worked out. You have support to really come alongside to say, these are why we're doing these projects. Yes, we know that the need is great. Yes, we know the need exceeds what we have for available funding, but you can guarantee yourself you are making the best decisions for your community based on all these points of input. And like I said, they'll naturally fall out. You'll have the perfect projects that'll score, you know, those 80, 90s. You'll have some of these good projects, right, that'll score in the 60s and 50s. And then you'll have some not great projects. You know, inevitably some project makes it up there as someone's wish list or something, but when you really kind of hold it accountable to the rubric that we've developed, you start to see it doesn't meet a lot of our goals. And so we'll get to it sooner or later, right? It'll just be at the bottom of the list. And as we work through our prioritizations, eventually we'll get to it, right? And so what we're kind of hoping is that, yes, we have this list, but let us bundle it for you in a way that's intelligent, and then let us hold it accountable to the decisions you want us to hold it accountable to bring back to you a prioritized, proactive tool that has you that allows you to understand that, yes, we're starting right here. And we're going to work our way down, and we're going to go as far as our dollars can stretch because we know that these are the right projects to do at the right time for our students. Now, I can give Jamie the impossible task of talking about finding you some money, so I'll hand that back over, and we'll go from there.
I don't think it's impossible. We've already found you some money, so that's the good news. I wanted to introduce April Thompson from King Consulting as well. Hi there. So where do school districts get funding for facilities? Not many places. So you have your LCFF, you know, local, state, and federal, essentially. Your LCFF, major deferred maintenance, routine restricted maintenance, developer fees. You're not collecting an overwhelming amount of those here in St. Helena. General obligation bonds, certificates of participation out of your general fund. Those can be, depending on how risk averse you are, an opportunity. Parcel taxes, and then like Trent said, some joint use with community partners. At the state level, there's really just the state school facility program, and you've been incredibly proactive, and that's what we're here in participating in that, and that's what we're here to talk to you about today. And then April's going to talk a little bit about CalShape as well, which is another program that's administered by the California Energy Commission. And at the federal level, you know, with COVID, there was some FEMA COVID relief funding. There's some FEMA money available in emergency situations, and then there's some interesting other funds, underground storage tank removal, safe drinking water. There are other grant opportunities as well, like green schoolyards through CAL FIRE. So our job working for you really is just to look at your projects and then to go match those projects with any and all funding opportunities that are available, so we can stretch your local dollars as far as they'll go. You've been incredibly proactive, like I said, in participating in the state school facility program, so kudos to you. You've received funding from the new construction program, the modernization program, the facility hardship program, the career technical education program. That was a program that started in 2008. You were right in there at the very beginning. There's been other funding rounds since then. We expect there'll be more with the next state school bond, and then other grant opportunities as well. There are other programs at the state. We're not going to talk about all of them today, but there is a minimum essential facilities program which funds ancillary facilities. So when looking at things like multipurpose rooms and restrooms, we'll be exploring that as an opportunity for matching funding. Seismic mitigation, if there's any retrofitting that needed to be done, that's another opportunity. Those projects also jump to the front of the line for funding, just like facility hardship. There's a pre-K, TK, full-day kinder grant facilities program, the longest named program in the history of the SFP. It's highly competitive. In the first round, you needed to, the state loves unfunded mandates, so they're like, educate every 4-year-old in the state, and here's half a billion dollars. There's about $9 to $15 billion worth of need, and they've put about less than $1 billion towards it. We do anticipate they're going to continue to have future rounds. Like I said, it is competitive based on the number of students on free and reduced lunch and whether or not you're financial hardship, which means you don't have any local funding. And so, if you have the need, we will submit to compete. You don't need DSA or CDE approval because it's competitive. It's just a 2-page application determining your eligibility and submitting. So if you had projects, we would submit for you in that program to compete. Like I said, we anticipate there'll be more funding for it. Your historical participation, like I said, since 1999, you've received over $13 million in state funds through the new construction, the joint use program, which is no longer available, but you did receive funding through that, facility hardship, modernization, and CTE grants. Your modernization eligibility has been calculated. The way that the modernization program works is it's based on the facilities, the age of your facilities, and it's site specific. So you have this kind of, consider it a bank of money at the state that you can access. They look at how many portables you have that are over 20 years old, how many permanent buildings you have that are over 25 years old, and whatever that percentage is, they give you the percent of your highest enrollment ever reported. And that translates to pupil grants, which is on the top table. Those pupil grants translate to funding, and that funding goes up every year in January with a construction cost index. So these numbers are locked in. They will only ever increase. This number never decreases, and you can access it for anything modernization wise, right? Playgrounds, asphalt, basically everything that was on those lists that was discussed is eligible for modernization funding. Do you have anything to add?
No, I think you summed that up very well. These are your current funding applications that we're working on right now.
I should wear flats when we present together.
Sorry. I know, sorry. These are your current state funding applications that are in progress right now. The St. Helena Primary School has current eligibility, so that application for that for the HVAC replacement, you currently have about a little over $500,000 in eligibility there under the modernization program. So that'll be going in as soon as possible. And then the other applications for the other school sites will be utilizing eligibility that will be coming back to the district in spring of 2024. So we sort of go backwards to see what projects have you done that we can put in for funding, since we know that timeline to receive the funding for the modernization program, it's one of those FIFO programs, so it's a first in, first out. So instead of looking forward to some of the projects you have down the line, we sort of looked backward to see what have you done that we can get you in line for now, so then in a couple of years this funding will come back to you and you can put it towards additional projects.
And I think what's important to note is, well, why didn't we get in line at the time we did the project? You didn't have the eligibility at that time, so we can't submit an application for you until you have the eligibility. So when you see that date up there of 3/26/2024 and 4/30/2024, that date isn't here yet. That's the date we will be submitting those applications, because you took funding 20 or 25 years ago for those buildings already because you were so proactive at the beginning of the state program. Now those buildings are turning over again. And so it generates more eligibility for you. So as soon as that eligibility is available, we're going to submit for these and get you in line for a little over $11.8 million. And that'll be on that 2 to 3 year timeline. So you're looking at funding in 2026, 2027. And that does require that the next state school facility bond passes in November. Your remaining modernization eligibility will be a little over $4 million at St. Helena Elementary. So this can be applied towards future projects that you want to do at that campus. It will require DSA, CDE approval, all those things Trent talked about. So if you were to start plans today, and you're looking at a 12-month timeline for pre-design, design, and DSA approval, you'd be submitting an application for a project there maybe a year from now. But this information is helpful, I think, because while you don't want to let and you have a little at St. Helena High, while you don't want to let the funding drive the facilities, sometimes in that rubric, it does come into play, right? Is there deferred funding for this? Can we prioritize projects at the elementary so that we can quickly get in line for this? And knowing in 3 years we'll get this back, and then we can allocate that at a site that maybe doesn't have modernization eligibility. Your eligibility is updated every year. It only increases, and it will increase in January next month when the CCI goes up. It increases with enrollments, and it also increases when new facilities become of age. April?
So as Jamie mentioned, we do need the next state school bond to pass in that we expect is going to come in November on the November ballot. Unfortunately, that we had that Prop 13, unfortunately named, that was the first state school facility bond that failed to pass in California, and that was in 2020. Despite that fact, the state legislatures realized, and our governor realized, that this program, the SFP program, is vital to the maintenance and well-being of the districts and the facilities across the state. So our governor and the legislation pulled money from the general fund and allocated it into the SFP program to keep these applications that had been sitting in line, and more were getting in line behind it. They moved money over from the general fund into SFP to keep those applications moving throughout the state. And we are looking at, as I mentioned, in November, about another $14 billion bond will be on the ballot. There are two bills working their way through. Right now, there's an Assembly bill and a Senate bill. There will likely be more language from the Assembly Bill 247 from Marisucci that will be put forward into that 2024 ballot initiative or proposition. The SB 28 uses a lot of the language from that 2020 failed bond, so it's expected that will there won't be much of that used going forward into the actual election.
I wanted to back up really quick. Something that I think is really critical that I failed to highlight is that every state program requires a local match. So while we're getting you in line for that $11 million, and you've already matched that with local funding, and when it comes back to you, you can use it anywhere. It'll go in your Fund 35, and you can apply it towards some of those projects that will likely fall short of your actual need. For any future applications we put in, here you're looking at $4 million. You have to have $2.7 million in local funding to match that. Likewise, for facility hardship, seismic mitigation, the new construction program, which funds that minimum essential facilities for ancillary facilities I talked about, you have to have a local match for that. So we can access the reimbursement funds for projects you've already done, but for any new projects you're going to do that you want to access state funding for, you are going to have that local match.
It's important to know also that, as we mentioned before, I just want to underscore that those amounts will increase every year. So even on the applications that we are planning on submitting in 2024, with the annual increase of the pupil grants that correlates with the construction cost index, that happens every January. So if it takes 2 to 3 years for your applications to be picked up, at that time we need to justify those costs. And so if the I don't want to get too far into the weeds. If the pupil grant amount or the total ask exceeds your actual project costs, then we will reduce our ask, and so which likely will happen in 2 to 3 years. So what that means for you is that some of those pupil grants at the sites where it shows that we've exhausted it, those pupil grants will be returned to your baseline, and we will be able to, you will have additional funding that you'll be eligible for at that time. So looking ahead, I know it looks like you only have $4 million right now, but that will increase over the years, and it just, it's hard to project without knowing what those actual pupil grant increases will be every January.
Yep. So if we look at an example, so at St. Helena High School, your modernization eligibility is $6.5 million. We're getting you in line for $6.5 million for those projects combined, but you're really close to that number with your hard construction costs. So, you know, in some years the CCI goes up 15%. So as that goes up every January, we'll come back to you and show you how the reduction in the pupil grants will give you back some modernization eligibility in your bank for future projects. We work really closely with your team. And this is just a graphic we put together. You know, a lot of districts in the absence of state funding and when the state funding program runs out of money, they don't want to get in line. And, you know, we always encourage districts to get in line even when there's no money. They put your application on what's called an applications received beyond bond authority. So for example, in 2020, there was, you know, $3 billion worth of projects on that list, and the bond didn't pass, but the governor and the legislature put $3 billion into the program, and all of those applications got picked up and are now getting funded. So there's been continuity in funding since the inception of the program. One failed bond that was on a primary election right as COVID hit, and was unfortunately numbered. We are very confident about the November bond. In between Prop 1D in 2008 and Prop 51 in 2016, districts continued to get in line in the absence of funding in the program, and when Prop 51 passed, they just continued going down the line. So we are working on your applications. We know you're getting in line, but we want to encourage you to continue to do so. And, oops, I should never be in charge of technology. Do you have any questions? I know that was a lot. There's a lot more that we would be happy to stand up here and talk about regarding funding.
Yeah, you actually just answered my question about what if the bond doesn't pass. I appreciate your confidence.
Absolutely.
So my other question was, the money we receive back for modernization projects can be used for projects that aren't considered modernizing?
Yes, that is
Okay.
money that you've already spent. So it comes back into your Fund 35. It is restricted. You can't put it in your general fund. It has to stay in your capital facility fund, and it has to stay. It has to be used for for capital facility projects, but it can be used for anything. It doesn't have to be used for modernization. You can build a new classroom if you like. You're not restricted in what type of capital facility project you do.
Okay, great, thanks.
Sure.
When you mentioned that we get in line for the money, do they prioritize larger districts, or is it just they go down the line?
It's just by date received.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah.
And I'm a little confused by the comments you made about the local match.
Okay.
Can you go over what that
Yes.
means? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So, for example, the modernization program. So, the state says we'll give you, based on the pupil grant amount, the state gives you 60% of a project for modernization, and you match it with 40%. And so ultimately, for every state program, they want to give you the funding for the hard construction costs. Like Trent was mentioning earlier, turn the building upside down, shake it out. They're going to give you all the money that you need to build the actual building. You're supposed to match it with your share, and your share are your architectural fees, all your soft costs. So
Okay.
architectural fees, funding consulting fees, engineers fees, inspectors.
Agency approvals, all of that.
Bidding,
that all goes
procurement,
into
like all of the
administrative costs, like Trent had highlighted.
all of the red tape.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so all the programs are different, though. That's a really good question. The new construction program is 50-50 match. The modernization 60-40. Facility hardship depends on the type of project. So sometimes it's 60-40, sometimes it's 50-50. Every program is a little bit different.
Great, thank you.
Absolutely.
I have a quick question. Funding for facilities, the local, the state, the federal. Last week we were at the school board conference, and I attended several different sessions that talked about greening campuses, and they talked about getting grants that help them with their garbage recycling, things like that. I have a book full of notes, but is that something that you explore, or something as our district we need to be following up with these other districts and finding out where they got the grant? And
Sort of a combination of that. I mean, there are so many programs out there that are specifically directed at certain initiatives, or whether it's green schoolyards with safety and security,
Farm to Fork.
Yeah, Farm to Fork. There are a lot of different programs out there. We are constantly researching and searching out those opportunities at the federal level, at the state level, as well as at your local levels. A lot of the time, though, if you come across something that is presented at a meeting, please let us know, and we will work to find out the guidelines, what it takes to submit, that kind of thing. There are things that we submit on your behalf, and sometimes we are researching those projects and then can present it. Sometimes some of those smaller local grants are only for the district to submit on their own, but we will support in any way we can. Sometimes it takes a while to research those needs.
Yeah, I think for us, our strategy is usually to look at what your specific needs are and then to go look for the grants, right? So that we're not just hunting. There's so many grants, not hunting down everything like, oh, you guys want, I don't know, something obscure. There's Farm to Fork grants. We need your staff's help in writing those grants, right? For the CTE grants we wrote, we need staff support because a lot of them are programmatic driven and have specific requirements about, I'm just thinking of the food one that we just did help Napa with, that it's about delivery and operational things that we don't know about, but absolutely. So there's a new a COPS grant coming out. There's a lot of from the Department of Justice and Homeland Security, things like fencing and security upgrades, cameras, et cetera. And so April's been doing a lot of the work to research that. So if that was on your list of priorities, like we want safer schools, we want these upgrades, then that's certainly something that we would provide you the information for and say, here's the steps you need to go to, here's the staff people that need to be supporting this.
And what it really comes down to, like Jamie said, is what are those critical needs? What are your priorities as a district? And that's why that prioritization tool, looking at those, the future needs that were listed out by John and emphasized by Trent. Once we know you've identified what those needs are and what your projects are going forward, then we can, look at those different pots of money and match what fits to your needs.
And just to add to that, if I'm aware of grants or if I get emails about grants, I'm like, oh, what's this? I think our district is interested and we can apply for these. I will forward those to both Jamie and April and work directly with them to research it, to ensure that we get in line and that we are securing as much as possible with funding.
Those little grants add up.
We want to turn over every rock.
Absolutely.
I have a question.
Okay.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes. We can't see you, but we can hear you.
Okay. Oh, okay. Thank you. You're talking about pupil grants, and for some reason, with all my time on the board, I'm not recalling ever hearing that before. So can you just go back and explain once again, just what are pupil grants?
Yes.
And they're based on enrollment is what I'm gathering?
Yes. So every pupil grant translates to a dollar amount from the state. So if they say your enrollment at this school is 500, 50% of your students are in buildings that are over 20 years old or over 25 years old, they're going to give you 50% of your enrollment. So you're going to have 250 pupil grants. Does that make sense? So they're looking at pupil grants translates to the number of enrolled students you have in facilities that are over a certain age.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I think right now it's around 6,000 for elementary and 9,000 for high school. You also will hear sometimes 50-year-old pupil grants. Those are not 50-year-old students. Those are students that are in buildings that are over 50 years old, and you get additional funding for that. So when we are looking at your eligibility, those are the most conservative numbers because each project is specific. So you can also get additional augmentations for 50-year-old utilities. So do you have, as part of a modernization project, utilities that are over 50 years old, you get additional funding for that. So we're making sure we're checking all the right boxes for those special augmentations that are project specific.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, absolutely.
And Jamie, just to clarify, I think earlier I heard you say that for those pupil grants, our enrollment numbers can only go up. The state won't actually count lower numbers, enrollment numbers, correct?
Right. So the modernization program, the new construction program is different. You have to have the eligibility when you submit your application, and when it's picked up, you don't have any. Most districts that are in declining enrollment or have seen declines since COVID, they don't have any new construction eligibility. We run it every year. That said, for modernization, you report your highest enrollment. That's why you want to update it annually, because you can lock in your highest enrollment, then you never have to update your enrollment again. So if your enrollment at your high school in 1999 was higher than at its highest point, and that's what was reported, we get to continue to report that enrollment. That's one good thing this state does. There are more things if the state's listening. We don't want to make any enemies here. There are many good things they do, but. Any more questions?
So my question is, how does solar renewable energy fit into all of this package?
Very good question. April, you want to talk about this CEC and CalShape at all? Or we could start with energy and then move over to.
I mean, your solar initiatives, your solar projects, those are eligible for the modernization program under the state school facility program, first of all. I'm sure Gopal could probably speak to that and has a little bit more information on the other, programs that are out there. The California Energy Commission has had programs over the years, like Prop 39, which I know that the Green Energy Jobs program that your district had participated in, years back. There's the CalShape program currently. That's not specifically for solar initiatives. It's for energy efficiency in your HVAC, your mechanical units, and your efficiency in your water usage as well. That is, an opportunity. But specifically for solar, like I said, right now I think mostly the SFP modernization program, unless Gopal has some other comments on that.
I think one of the challenges with solar is fantastic, and a lot of districts are doing electric buses, but there's not a lot of funding that we've been able to identify for infrastructure, right? You have to have the chargers in order to be able to get the buses. But yeah, as far as solar, if you want to pop up and say something about it, all of that is eligible. Long answer, short question. All of that is eligible for modernization.
Yes. Hi. So if there's a limited amount of money and you need it for other things, you don't have to worry about solar. Solar can be funded through what's called a power purchase agreement. Somebody else will own and operate the equipment on your property, and you just pay for the power that it produces rather than for the equipment itself. That's the direction I'm telling my clients to head in, even if they have the money, even if they have a tax appetite, because there are the headache of making sure the system runs is not on you, it's on somebody else. What that doesn't allow you is to do is just eliminate your utility bill. You still have a bill, but you're paying a much lower amount to somebody else rather than to PG&E. And in terms of timing, you don't have to wait for years for that to happen. You can, a company called SiteLogic has submitted interconnection applications on your behalf for 4 sites here. There's a timeline associated with getting those projects completed. So that's something that you can proceed with immediately. You don't have to wait. Yeah. Anyway, I'm happy to add as much more. I need to constrain myself, because once I start on solar, you can't shut me out. Yeah.
And Gopal will actually be back either in January or February. We've been working closely to come back to the board either in January or February with an update on the district's recommendations in terms of how we might want to proceed.
Thank you. That was my next question, is kind of what's next with that. Yeah, thank you.
As far as, with solar, it's important to note on the funding side that from the state's perspective, their solar goals have been met as far as school districts go. So that's why you see there's really not as much funding available, and you see a lot of changes happening at the Public Utilities Commission at the state as far as the the net metering amounts and things like that are changing, and not necessarily to the benefit of the school districts. It doesn't. You used to be able to justify the costs of your construction, and this goes to what Gopal was saying. You used to be able to justify your cost of construction and show that over the life of your system, that the savings it would generate would justify that cost of construction. And unfortunately, with the changes at the the Public Utilities Commission, that doesn't pencil out anymore for districts. The savings has shrunk. Not to say that it's not still important to install solar, and the power purchase agreement that Gopal mentioned is a great option for districts looking at installing new solar because you don't incur the cost of construction. Given that, we don't have anything to go back and request reimbursement for. So if you go that route with the power purchase agreement, you're not incurring the costs of construction. But it also means that we can't put it in for funding. You won't be able to get any additional funding because you're not putting out any money for us to request for reimbursement.
Which is good.
Which is good.
Yes, so let me add a little bit. So these applications that have been turned in are for net metered systems to grandfather the district under the old rules. You're constrained to building the systems exactly as these applications have been submitted. You cannot build more, a larger system. You cannot reduce the system size by more than 20%. But if you decide you actually want to own these systems, after 6 years, you will have the option to buy the system out from the PPA provider. At that stage, if you want, you will be able to use any free money you have to buy those systems out. I mean, we can write the RFP that way, if it's going the RFP route.
Thank you.
Yeah, and that's for the existing projects. These 4 applications are tied to individual meters. So it doesn't offset all of your electric utilities. It's just for 4 meters. If you want to add more solar, it will have to be under net metering version 3's rules, which will require the addition of batteries and so on and so forth. Okay. Anyway, I'll give you more than you need to know.
Yeah, we didn't want to scare you. Or you, Gopal.
Long story short, solar's a whole big other conversation.
Yes.
Sean, do you have any questions?
You're going to be shocked that I really don't.
Well, I have some questions just about the future needs, the list, and maybe this is for John.
Okay.
To just to kind of understand, and I know we're going to do a reassessment and a new list is coming, but I just wanted to have a better understanding on the district-wide. What does an enhanced audio-visual system entail?
So basically, it's part of a classroom toolkit in which you would have either televisions or projector screens, whichever is the desire of that particular facility, as well as a sound system.
Great. And then, John, another question. I see on some of the site specifics, it's about installing wells and things like that. Are public buildings exempt from any kind of community restrictions about installing new wells?
I believe they are. However, that's something that I would need to look into. I do think that the Water Control Board would need to be addressed, and we would need to get their approval.
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, and the reason I ask that is just that, particularly within the city of St. Helena, well permits are not being handed out in ribbons by any stretch of the imagination. So that's why I was curious about that.
And that was something that we added based on some of the concerns from the site. And then on a previous list, I think that Joe and Brian had worked on, they'd identified that as a way to save money for your irrigation system.
Yeah, no doubt. I just don't know if, how realistic it is if the city, if the county is not issuing those. And then I had one other on the elementary school campus. You talked about there are 27 HVAC units approaching age, end of useful life. How old are those? Like 20 plus years?
Yeah, I think they're 24 years if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. Okay, perfect. Thank you. I think that was my question on the list. Thank you.
So I guess I lied. I didn't know could ask questions on some of those items. I had a question on the district-wide also. The bullet for upgrade, replace security system. Did I hear you say that some of them are failing, meaning they're not working today?
I'm not sure that they're not working today. I know that the maintenance has had some issues with keeping them in working order.
They are working, but they're constantly going into trouble. So we're having just the panel goes into trouble. Also, just spider webs, that's causing an issue as well. Movement, noise at night, just triggering the panel to go into trouble.
Typically, some of that is old wiring or some open connections, water getting into them and creating shorts. It may actually be the control panels that are going bad as well, or are old and need replacement.
Okay. And then there was on the St. Helena High School, so I guess a couple slides further. The replacing the old bleachers with ADA accessible, did you say that was the football field?
Yes.
Okay. And then the portables at the football field, where is this, the snack shack? I was just curious.
No, those are those portables out by the scoreboard. There's some older portables out there. I don't even know what they use them for. I know there was storage that they were being used for at one point, and maybe even a team room. Long time ago. Yeah.
I was unaware.
Sounds like they were used as a team room a long time ago, and they're not, according to Ben, they're not currently being used in that manner.
Okay, so this is just to remove them. It's not replace.
Correct. I don't believe that there's a need for new ones at all.
Okay, thank you.
And then we might not know the answer to this. And the portables at the primary school, removal and not replace, that would be something that we would need to consider as well. And so, but removal for sure. Is that what you're saying?
Removal for sure. Yeah, they're old. They're over 23 years old, I believe. They're leaking. They're rotting. They're just getting past their useful life.
Yeah, that makes
and
sense.
typically, you don't want to put too much money into portables. They're not built for the long haul.
Right. Exactly. Thank you. And I'm sorry, Mr. Cinto, I cut you off.
No, you didn't. You're good. I just had I don't know if it was you or Trent that mentioned, you were talking about bundling. Are you talking about bundling? I mean, are you talking about it multiple ways? Maybe that was you, Trent, of those specific projects, or bundling in terms of the overall goal? So like if the goal is energy, are you talking about solar, windows, HVAC all lumped together, and does that increase our purchasing power when you do all those things lumped together? Or are you just talking about bundling, so like asphalt across all 4 sites, or both of those things?
I think we'd look at it kind of for how Jamie and her team can get you money, and a lot of that goes back to how DSA will approve it. So they want you to be site specific. So we would have to do, if there's a district initiative to say we want to redo the paving, we do 4 applications for you. Jamie would take 4 applications to the state and you'd come back. But again, then we'd also kind of bundle like-minded stuff. So instead of saying, hey, we're going to do this exterior paint, maybe we grab the exterior paint and we get the windows and we do some HVAC upgrades. And instead of just sort of picking them off one at a time, we'll bundle it into a larger project, call it a modernization. Jamie and her team can get you money. John has purchasing power with their contractors, and it's a little bit easier to manage. And then you'll get better pricing for it as well.
I have a quick question. I was looking at, using terms like, you said the restroom upgrades at the elementary school and then cosmetic upgrades of the RLS, NPR, and locker room. When you talk in kind of generalities of those upgrades, how do they apply to warm, safe, and dry? Like when I'm thinking of like the cosmetic upgrades at the RLS to NPR.
Those wouldn't apply to warm, safe, and dry. I mean, you do have some of the old basketball hoops at the multipurpose room, which need to be assessed. I don't know that they would meet current structural standards.
Okay.
At the locker room there, old lockers, they're beat up. Some of them are not usable. Sharp edges.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Dr. Vang, as far as our set-aside funds, how much do we have in our set-aside funds right now for, I know we have one for turf and for future classrooms and things. Do you have that? Do you know that at the top of your head? Or?
So I'll actually be presenting the first interim next week, but part of the set aside, there's about $2 million for deferred maintenance. So I do have that as part of our budget assumptions, is the $2 million set aside for deferred maintenance.
Okay, right. Thank you very much.
Okay, so I think if I could just maybe recap for my own understanding, since it's a little bit different when you're not in the room. So it sounds like from here, the next step is going to be a reassessment of the lists that we've been presented in the items, prioritized based on district goals. We will then get that list and as a board we'll give direction on that list of what we would like to proceed with. Is that my understanding? Is that understanding correct? Okay.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what we'd like to ask, and then also kind of hand in hand help us develop those priorities so we can develop that matrix based on. I mean, that's sort of what we generally see. Let us make a specific plan for you based on your priorities, and you could work with Dr. Vang to do that.
Mm-hmm. And how do you see that happening as far as prioritizing and us being part of that conversation?
I'm open to suggestions. If the board wants to proactively participate in that, or if you want to just have me report back to you, I can go either way. It just depends on how much involvement you want to have.
That's correct. Yeah. And I guess we can leave that to President Pelosi and you to discuss how to move forward. Are you feeling okay with that? Yeah.
Because I'm pretty confident that with the team that the partners we're working with, we can, as long as we have a list that the board is, if there's anything else you want to add to the list, we can definitely do that. After we do a reassessment and we have a clearer picture, I can work directly with Trent and John. And just, as Jamie had mentioned, making sure that whatever projects we're looking at, that we can also get state funding to match.
Okay.
I did want to just kind of put Derek on the spot. I know Derek and I have been talking a lot about student devices, staff devices, technology in general, and there was a question about enhancing audio vision system. And so, Derek, maybe if you can just fill everybody in on what you and I have been discussing and some of the things that, quotes that we've been working on, and share what we have up to right now.
Yeah, sure. A broad overview of audiovisual technology in the classrooms is that primary, elementary, and middle school have all been upgraded with Promethean boards, moving away from the long throw projectors and televisions. Current plan with those is that as they're older, they have both right now. They have some of their older audiovisual technologies as well as the Promethean boards. The plan is once the older ones begin to fail, we start removing them from the classroom so they can mostly rely on their current Promethean boards. The only site that hasn't had a full refresh of Promethean boards at this time is the high school. That's something Ben and I just need to sit down and talk about so we can deploy that appropriately. In the past, when we did do a deployment, it was specifically for the English department, and Ben has been great about using his budget to purchase 1 or 2 off Promethean boards for certain teachers at the high school, but not everyone has one yet. So going forward, we would like to do a full deployment at the high school. This year, we're going to do a redeployment at RLS. They've had their boards for about 6 years, so it's time for a refresh. Some of them are having some technical difficulties. It's a lot more difficult to update their firmware than what their current technology allows, so we're going to go ahead and replace those this summer, should the board approve that quote coming to you this month, I believe. And that's all for audio visual. Okay, was there anything else specific you wanted me to cover there? Like the clock and bell system. Yeah, so maintenance has currently been deploying clocks that we purchased last year. They're Wi-Fi clocks, and they've been deploying them throughout the district. They're different from the current ones we have. So some of the current ones that are still existing are analog clocks. My rudimentary understanding of analog is that it kind of does a burst and it rewinds the clocks every night. The new clocks are Wi-Fi based, so they point to a network time protocol server, which means they're always on time all the time. And so we don't have any issues when, a bell is a minute ahead or anything like that. And the teachers have all been very grateful. I know RLS specifically, because some of their clocks were iffy there for a little bit. So maintenance has been deploying those and then ordering more as needed for some common areas that were missed in like our initial walkthroughs. As far as the bell system, Kay and I have been talking about the bell system really since you got here and doing a deployment. And ideally what we would like to do is mirror the environments we have at RLS in the elementary school with our front row system. A couple reasons for that. One, we already have it. We're very comfortable with it and familiar. Another thing is that the secretaries can cross-train each other on how to use that program. So scheduling bells. You can schedule all of your bells before the school year starts, like a rally schedule, so you don't have to think about it. You don't have to do it the day of. Some sites are still adjusting the day of, whereas over there, it's like, we know what the rally day is going to be, and it's in January. So it's just done. It's set up. You don't even have to think about it. And if you do need to make an adjustment, it's very easy to do. As far as the infrastructure that goes along with that, I'll keep it high level, but some of the base plans we have for the high school and the middle school would be to repair the existing copper wiring that's running to the speakers and replacing the housing that goes in it. Because we need a very in-depth understanding of where the wiring is going, where it's running to, and then what the infrastructure that it's running in looks like, and repair that adequately so it lasts us at least another 20 years. That's my goal. So that's where we're at with that. It was going to be something we were going to do last summer, as the board knows. However, we needed to push it off to reassess some of that deeper infrastructure work that needs to be done. So.
Was that the project there where we rejected the bids to rebid the project?
Yes.
That's what I thought. Yes. Okay.
Yes. Okay. And then, as Derek pointed out, by having our maintenance team install the clocks and having that done in-house, we saved about 30. I think
it was $40,000.
Yes.
And I guess one of the comments I would have on these, the assessment list to come forth is, realizing, is there anything that can be done in-house on these lists versus, or is this all going to be, like for painting, for example, I'm not talking about windows and things like that. Upgrade door hardware. Is that the kind of hardware that we're talking about for safety? Or are we just talking about old, dilapidated hardware that's not locking? I don't, just to kind of understand what that is. And is that something that maintenance can do, or do we need an outside contractor?
Maintenance is taking care of the doors and locks. It's mostly the hardware, so we can have one key entry and getting rid of old door locks and cores. So it's mostly an upgrade, and we did the outside doors, and we're working on the interior doors at each one, and we're going in phases as we go.
Okay. Great.
And
Thank you.
to add to that, President Pelosi, anything that our team, I've been working closely with Kyle since he's been on board too, anything that our team can actually do that's not going to take them away from the work orders that they already have in place. We do have a system where sites are putting in work orders. So as Kyle and his team are going through that list, anything that they can do, they're taking care of that. If they need to provide me with quotes so I can look into that, we've been working on quotes as well. But anything that can be done in-house with school, with our general fund dollars, we've been doing as much as we can, but as you may know, the cost of keeping up with not only deferred maintenance but the modernization of keeping classrooms up to date, it's a bit more than what our general fund can sustain.
I have a question about the restroom upgrades at the elementary school. So my question would be, we've always been told that once you start going into restrooms with upgrades, there's like some possible ADA issues that might come up, and it gets fairly expensive. Could you comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, so some of the things they're looking at are like the turning radiuses for a wheelchair. toilets and how far off they're of the walls they are, as well as some grab bars and that kind of stuff of that nature. Specific, I guess I'm specifically your question.
So will we know when you're costing that out, will we actually know the cost of that, or will, once they start doing work, we might see something below with pipes and et cetera, where it's going to cost much more than what we anticipated?
Well, we'll go through and look at the as-built as well as do like an on-site investigation. So we'll put the best effort forward to and do our due diligence to figure out exactly what that is. Sometimes we get into the ground and those pipes are corroded,
right.
Or just running backwards, or undersized. So, but those are some of the things that we the engineers will take into account when they budget the project.
Okay. Thank you.
John, can you
Trustee
maybe
Kerr is not a
speak
fan
to
of that change order?
Oh, sorry.
I remember.
One other thing I remember in a past board meeting, I believe that we had talked about setting up a schedule for interior and exterior painting of the sites. And I know that there's a couple that say exterior painting on some of the schools and maybe interior. I just wasn't sure where that fell in here, just as a upkeep item.
For the upkeeping of the painting, sorry, I'm way too far away from that. For the upkeeping of the painting, we're just trying to take care of that during breaks. We'd get the most done during like Christmas break, Thanksgiving break, spring break. We could do a little bit during school. Kids would love to touch wet paint. But a lot of that we could just do in-house, so we don't have to hire outside contractor for that.
Okay, I guess
that could just.
Thank you. I guess I was saying I don't see it consistently on here, and I wasn't sure if it's on a plan. I guess that's where I'm not sure if you have a different site plan or in-house plan versus what we're looking at here. So thank you.
Superintendent Aurelio, did you have something to say? Did you want to comment? You're good. Okay.
I just wondered if Trent and John could talk about planning and when we go out to bid, if there's any possible savings by going to bid earlier or some certain timing, maybe going to bid in October, November as opposed to February.
Yeah, so recently we've adopted that method just as the costs have increased based off of whether it's COVID years or just escalation. So we've been trying to get the projects at least through DSA earlier and getting bids out a lot earlier. Obviously, bidding in December with the holidays becomes a bit tricky. So depending on the project, we're trying to bid it earlier before the end of the year to get us. Usually there's a rush through to get projects to DSA before the end of the year, especially when there's a new code cycle. So yeah, we're trying to get those projects done and out to bid earlier. The closer to summer you get, then the more the price increases, people start to fill up.
Quick question, John. When you talk about refresh to a building like the locker rooms, I mean, that could be a very minor thing or a very major thing. When you envision refresh, what does that involve? Because you have, shower stalls, current standards with single stall showers versus, anyway, it could be something very big, and I don't know what your idea around refresh is. And in terms of HVAC, how does that interact with, wood flooring in the gymnasium, all those kind of things? Is that something you have in mind as well?
Yeah, so in terms of refresh of the locker rooms and the usage of the showers, I mean, that's some information that we need to get from you guys in terms of, a lot of the schools aren't using showers like they used to, and so we've been taking out those gang showers and going into some individual stalls instead of having 12 showers. Maybe for like the high school, you'd have 3 or 4 with some changing rooms. And then in terms of some of that other refresh, like at the locker room, you've got some chip tiles and you've got some ADA issues with some of those some of those stalls as well.
So we kind of define the extent to the refresh.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll rely on you and what you believe those needs are for the usage. We're not able to go in there during when kids are using them, so you guys will know better than we do.
I think my question's more for funding for Jamie and team. The Department of Justice grant that was mentioned, because I see a lot of on the list here things that I would think could fit under that: the alarm systems, the fire, even the public address system could be a safety. Would all those things be lumped under that?
They could be, yes. The COPS funding through the Department of Justice is specifically, it can be equipment, like you're mentioning, safety door hardware or campus-wide security, fencing, sometimes security systems. It all comes down to, that narrative and how you would justify those improvements to assist your local law enforcement agency in case of an emergency.
So is that funded? Do we have to partner with the local agency to apply for that grant?
No, you don't. You just have to write up that narrative to show, to justify your ask for the for that equipment.
And when is the round open?
The next round, they haven't announced it yet. But we expect it to open probably in February. Traditionally, it opens in or the notification goes out in February. It opens maybe around April and then closes at the end of May. So we're closely watching that and waiting for that that notice of funding availability to be released.
And with the CalShape, would that cover installing dual pane windows?
No, the CalShape program is specifically for energy efficiency projects relating to mechanical units and plumbing. But depending on my ears perked up when you talked about shower heads, because it does cover shower heads, faucets, toilets, urinals, fixtures like that for plumbing. And the great thing about the CalShape plumbing side of the house of that program is that it's 100% funded based on your contractor's estimate for the replacement of those fixtures. So depending on the age of the fixtures, if they were installed with the construction of the building or older modernization, then they have a higher water usage than what the current codes are right now, then they could be eligible for replacement under CalShape.
And April's not giving herself enough credit. She just got a district $1 million worth of urinals.
Just toilets and
worth of urinals.
It's essentially all you need to submit for that is an inventory of all of your current bathroom fixtures. Washer dryers or washer machines are covered, and ice machines made the list as well. So you inventory those. April's developed a really great spreadsheet to inventory those with the make and the model number, the energy inefficiency of them, and then you just make a list of what you want to replace them with. And like she said, it's 100% funded. So when you're talking about those restroom remodels, that would be important to tap into.
Does that include water
Fountains?
No.
So maybe this goes back to John. Going back to RLS, and you might stay up there because I don't know if it fits. I don't know if I'm just piecing things together. Domestic water lines. You said replace the failing domestic water lines. Is there a connection there with plumbing?
Are water lines covered under the CalShape?
No, it's just fixtures and appliances.
But if you have a water line that's failing and it's not due to it being at the end of its useful life, then potentially it could qualify for facility hardship. So depending on the age of it and if it's collapsed in an area, we have sewer lines replaced. We've had water lines replaced before. Electrical lines, if you have like a fault in an electrical line and you're not getting power to a building, those kinds of things. I mean, you don't want to have a facility hardship project, but if you do, they move right to the front of the line. So we can explore that for those lines.
So John, can you just tell us a little more about the domestic water line? What is that?
Yeah, the lines that we've seen issues with, and Joe can probably speak to this a little bit more, are more like old lines that are starting to fail just because they're into their useful life. Corrosion and stuff like that.
Sean, do you have any other questions?
Not at this time.
Okay. Just want to
Thank
make
you.
sure we didn't forget about you.
You're muted.
Lisa, you're on mute.
Yeah, got it. Are there any other questions from anybody at this point?
I think there's some staff.
I just have one last one. I noticed that concrete work, is different from asphalt. I don't know if you guys have inspected the concrete work on the sites as well.
Yeah, we have. I mean, like the one that stands out to me is at the elementary school where you've got the grove of redwood trees. That's the roots are tearing that up, both on the flat work and on those retaining walls. But yeah, we've looked at that. There's some uneven transitions just due to some heaving of concrete and all of that. So that's all part of that ADA path of travel upgrade that we've talked about. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, speaking of concrete, I was just wondering if this was the place to talk about things that maybe are not under the safe, warm, and dry space that might be part of modernization or beautification as well. So I didn't see painting the building under the elementary school, but it was under the district. So is that why it's not under the elementary school? I'm just wondering.
Yeah, I think it's a district-wide where many of the campuses are due for that painting refresh on the.
Because I did see it on other school sites, and
Yeah.
it wasn't an elementary, so I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, I tried to highlight most of the items. We didn't include everything that we've seen.
Right. It would be more than one slide, I guess.
Exactly, and
Same thing for asphalt. I didn't see that.
Same
The
thing.
black top is.
Same thing for asphalt. Like at RLS, we've got that basketball court where it's been water intrusion under that. It's starting to impact the structural integrity of the base under that, and so like that needs to be replaced in its entirety. Obviously, we know about the water issue over there and what we've done to help with the track and field, but.
And so what I didn't hear also, which may not fall under the warm, safe, and dry piece, is landscaping. Issues at the sites, irrigation, even beautification, concerns about that. And maybe this is just not the arena for that, the place for that.
So it's our intent to try and come up with a comprehensive list. We've had limited time without trying to impact the day-to-day. I do know that Trent and I will be over, as well as our teams will be over at the sites over the winter break. Hoping to gather all of that information, and then we'll present that, and then how that gets prioritized, and you'll have to figure that out.
Okay, and just finally, just the concrete again.
Yep.
Not so much ADA because it's not about walkways, but it's just concrete repair. Might have something to do with the historical society. Maybe they want to help us work on that, but just concrete pieces around these buildings that are so old that are falling apart. It's not, again, warm, safe, and dry issue, but it is something that should be.
Sometimes that is a safety issue too, right? I mean, trip hazards, and
right.
Whether it is part of the path or not.
Sometimes
we all
they're
know.
just like on the building.
Yep. Oh. Well, and that could be a safe and dry thing as well.
Thank you.
I have a warm, safe, and dry question, being the newer end of the trustee line here. You put up a chart about the proactive planning tool, things that were perfect, good, not great. In deciding something like Carmen was talking about paint, well, is that really warm, safe, and dry? How does one decide? Is there a chart somewhere that says this counts, or is that a subjective decision when something qualifies as a perfect project versus, yeah, it'd be nice to see the buildings painted, but is it a priority? Is it going to keep kids warm, safe, and dry kind of thing? How does that, just for background for me, please?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things we talked about is I solemnly swear not to just give you my opinion, right? We always kind of want to come back to that quantifiable. And so when we do this, we'll talk about this a lot, but it's really a process that we're going to walk through, not a product we are going to give you, right? And however you want us to go through that process to clarify all that, we can do. If you want us to sit down and say, one, it's incredibly important that we get your priorities. you know. But some of these things will be nice to haves, right? There's going to be like, yes, we would like them painted, and yeah, they won't get that warm, safe, and dry. But maybe there's a district initiative for beautification or campus culture, or reflecting views to taxpayers. Like there's going to be things that you bring weight into. It is important for us to have schools that our kids are proud of and our communities are proud of. Maybe that doesn't get the 20 points for warm, safe, and dry, but maybe it gets the district initiative points of 5, right? And so those will be worked in, and how we develop that. You can work with Dr. Vang to do that, or we can come in and speak to that, however you'd like us to do that. We basically work at your leisure. We'll do whatever you'd like us to do, and we will walk through this process with you to make sure it's always accountable back to those numbers, so you can say, yeah, this is a district initiative through Campus Pride or something like that. Does that make sense?
And this is something I should know, sorry, trustees. Is warm, safe, and dry, is that a statewide terminology, or is that just something St. Helena uses?
We use it statewide, but I will say I stole it from his boss about 10, 15 years ago, shamelessly taken from Todd Lee of Greystone West. And then I've taken it and ran it as far down the state as I possibly can, because it's a great way to say, what we do here, I believe, is try to proactively get you guys in a position to do what's best for your schools with responsibility to your taxpayers as well, right? Because as Jamie talks about, there's limited ways that you can get money, right? We're not going to win the Powerball and do everything. We're going to go back to your communities and ask them for help doing this, and we want to have a level of accountability, and the foundation of all of that ask is basically saying we are doing everything in our power to keep your kids warm, safe, and dry. That's the baseline. From there we'll move on, but we have to assure that that baseline's met just to make sure we can provide the best education for your students.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Vang, a question for you. Would it prove to be beneficial for you at all if the trustees were to go through this initial presentation of like future needs for each school site, put a WSD by each one or something that they deem a priority, and submit that to you to help speed up this process? Or do you want to have a new list assembled first and then do that process?
I think working off of this list right now, John and Trent are going to actually give us a comprehensive list. So I'm almost thinking, rather than now that I'm looking at you two, because you guys are going to come back during winter break, which is what, in like a week or 2 weeks, and they're going to give us a more comprehensive list. I'm thinking once they give us a comprehensive list, then I can email that out to all the trustees, and then we can have you go through that comprehensive list and provide input. How does that sound?
That does totally work. I just want us to be prepared as a board for you for next week as well. So any direction that you might be looking for next week.
I think for us, we'll do some good assessment work. We'll do some logical bundling, and we'll start to assign that matrix. We'll take a draft at that or a pass at that. And then you can say yes, no, or explain some more. What's really going to be important for us are those district initiatives. Like what is at your heart do you want us to help incorporate into that prioritization? So if you can get that back, we'll be able to then work that into that project prioritization list and kind of work from there. Because that's really what's going to take it from an anywhere assessment to a true St. Helena assessment, is getting us those district initiatives that we can work in. That'd be super helpful if we're looking for kind of homework and into the next steps.
And Trent, looking at the rubric, now is that a standard rubric, or is that specifically a rubric for St. Helena?
That rubric that we've presented is a rubric, sort of the foundation that we use kind of across the state, and that's why I'm saying that's where you can speak into that. That rubric can stretch out as far as you want it to. It's an Excel spreadsheet, so they can go forever. We'd encourage you not to, because it kind of becomes cumbersome. But we can definitely take that, mold that to be based on your directions, your initiatives, your sort of desires, and then we'll do that prioritization to make sure they're exactly your goals that help set forth your projects.
So, for example, there's no column for beautification, but if that needed to be here, it could.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or you could list that under a district priority.
Got it. Okay.
That's one of your priorities.
And we have a place for principal voice as well in the projects that is going to be brought to the board too. Okay, excellent.
I was just reminded that Andy Stubbs had done a concrete assessment with a company and brought, it was going to be done in 2 phases, phase 1 and phase 2. I believe we did phase 1 already. I don't know phase 2, but if we, that there's already kind of a site assessment that's been done on substandard areas of concrete, not buildings, but it was walkways and things like that, curbs. So, and I've been trying to think of the name and it's escaping me, but I know it was a contract that we approved. It would have been on contracts over $25,000. So I don't know if the other trustees remember that as well.
I think Kyle's going to speak to it.
So Precision out of Sacramento, they've already did phase 1. They did half of phase 2. They just have to complete phase 2 in the spring. That's just the fill holes. They need warmer weather. But all trip hazards, all safety issues are grinded down.
Great. Thank you so much.
Oh, they're actually going to come out, I believe, tomorrow to complete some of the patching. They said that they did need warmer weather, but they did contact me earlier this week and said that they could come out this week. So
that's great. Thank you so much, Kyle. Appreciate that.
Will this list, the list include like the estimated price, the total, the price of the project as well? Like the list that you've been giving, that you've shared with us the last couple of board meetings?
Yeah, and so what we'll do is we'll work with John to get you some like rough order of magnitudes in today's dollars, right, with some caveats all over it that they will escalate in from there. But we're going to give you a good idea of what that rough order of magnitude is, with an understanding that as things change, we'd like to kind of reserve the right to come back and tweak those numbers, but we'll definitely make sure we get them as close to 100% as we can for you.
Only if you decrease them.
No, then they're going to come back a little higher. No, yeah.
Thank you.
And Trent, so going back to slide 12, which was the original facility assessments that went from 2015 to 2025, you mentioned going out to 2033. Is that going to occur? That projecting out?
That's what we'd like to do. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else, Dr. Vang? I just want to make sure the board is clear and you're clear. Do you have everything you need from us for today?
I believe the team and I do. So just for my clarification, Trent and John will come out during winter break. They will update their list, provide some numbers, some rough estimates with the list. As soon as I get that list from them, I will forward that list to all of the trustees. Trustees, you will provide me with feedback. I will also work with site administrators and trustees to ensure that the rubric that we're using meets everyone's needs so that we can have a consistent rubric when we are prioritizing our facilities projects. Does that sound about right?
That sounds very accurate to me. Trustees, does that sound like the proper time frame and plan to you?
Yes, it does. And will we have enough time in order to do this before the January meeting as we thought we?
I think so, because John and Trent, you guys can come out we will have 3 weeks off, but I have a follow-up with the trustees in January. I want to say I feel confident that you'll have that list to me in time for them to review before I meet with them in January.
When's the meeting?
January 11th. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think the February board meeting is probably the better intent. I think we'll go through because I think we'd have to have everything to you by January 1st for the 11th board meeting would be my only concern. And I don't know what the February board meeting is off the top of my head.
Mm-hmm.
The 8th. We'll do our best to get it to you for the January.
And if we need to, Erica and I can work together and move the January dates down, the January 11th date down too, if that's okay with with all the trustees.
Or potentially a special.
Yes.
We need to do a special as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it might have to be a special, just with the if our board meetings our dates are changing to the second Thursday, potentially, there's going to be a motion to change our dates to the second Thursday of each month versus the And I happen to know that one trustee will not be there on February 8th. So we may have to have some kind of special in between.
Okay.
Yeah, and I definitely want them to have ample time to do the work that they need to do, because I know that's a lot. There's a lot going on.
Yes.
Yeah.
The construction cost index increase is happening at the January state allocation board meeting. So if it was after that meeting, or at least after that agenda comes out, we could have updated eligibility numbers for you as well.
That would be beneficial for sure.
I was just going to say, I think January maybe is a little improbable. We do have to acknowledge the holidays and let our friends celebrate whichever holiday you celebrate. But and the other thing, Jamie, thank you. I didn't have a real knowledge of what you do, and I really appreciate it. And yeah, I appreciate how hard you work to find us money, both. And thank you. That was really good knowledge for me. I appreciate it.
So glad to be here. Thanks. It's good to be back.
I have a request on the planning matrix, or the matrix that has all the points. If there is a definition of what goes into those categories, for example, I don't know what classrooms and ancillary space entails, because if that is painting, does that make sense? I'm just kind of curious of what goes into those buckets so that the points get allocated.
Yeah, and we can forward along to you sort of a definition of how we understand them, and then you can say, yes, we agree with that, or no, we'd like this changed a little bit. But really for us, it's just to make sure that we both consider the classroom spaces and the ancillary facilities, because I think a lot of times those ancillary facilities fall off. So we'll do a minimum essential facility assessment with Jamie to make sure that you're all aligned there. And then we can start talking about, yes, I mean, a lot of times does this enhance that classroom space? So some of those things like that, we might not say these aren't warm, safe, and dry, but overall, like the paint, the carpeting, the ceiling tiles, the things that make a learning environment that students can be more proud of, we'll start to put those points, we'll assign those points there as well. But we can definitely get you a list of how we see each one of those things sort of filling out, and you can give us the yes or no on that, or say, hey, bring back some other definition.
Thank you. And then, yeah, because that'll help, like campus equity, I think you said, is making sure that we are taking care of each school site properly, or
yeah, campus equity is a bit more tricky in larger districts, right? So what you don't want is one elementary school saying, hey, well, this elementary school down the road is getting much more money. I mean, because you have the ability for your students to matriculate through all of your campuses, they each get to experience those at campuses. And so it's probably not going to be as high up, but you also kind of don't want the staff at the primary saying, well, the elementary school is getting this and we're not getting that. So we will kind of tie back into those campus equity ideas to make sure that everybody has their needs met. But usually that's much more tricky when we have multiple campuses of the same cohorts.
And then immediate funding means what? We have the money and we're ready to pay for it. We're not waiting for a grant.
That'll go back to Jamie and how her team, if there's availability for these grants, like Jamie will talk about at the state level right now, they're beyond their bonded authority. So some of these projects we're going to get in line for, but some programs there's money for right now. So if we were to say find a facility hardship, that we could jump the line and do, we would prioritize that because we could go out and get that state funding immediately and then use that. It would be prioritized higher than one that doesn't have immediate money for. And then again, if the bond passes in November, all of those will just go back through. When the bond passes in November, we can just go through that. We can go right back through that matrix and just put yeses for all of those, because that funding will then be available. And then the nice thing is, because this is a living document, right? We're not just going to give you a binder that sits on your shelf. It will reorganize all of those project rankings and then give you different scores for that as you move forward and update these documents.
Okay, and then I think for the board, for me, what stands out as kind of ambiguous is the district priority piece.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that's something where we have to have a discussion on how do we assign points of district priority based on these, based on the projects.
Yeah, that's going to be your homework, right? I mean, because John and I can come around and say, this is what you have and this is how much it's going to cost, but it's hard. It's important for us to know how important each one of those things are to you. Right? And so we'll start to rely on you to help us know what your priorities are, so that we know that our assessment is validated and meets your requirements. So that's going to be kind of some of your homework while we go do our work as well.
So what do you need from us in that standpoint? Is it a, yes, this is a priority, yes, this can wait? Or is that where in the past on our business operations committee, we have stack ranked projects?
I think so. For me, like at this point, we'd kind of like maybe they could just be big qualifying visions. Like, we want you to prioritize the aesthetic beauty of our campuses, right? And that could be very broad. But then all of a sudden, some of these things that are like, these are just painting, they're not warm, safe, and dry. But it is essential for the board that these are aesthetically, beautiful campuses. And so we'll start to prioritize some projects those ways as well. Does it help you meet these goals? And we can give you some examples of others.
I can't see anything on this list that I wouldn't say is a district priority. So that's where I'm trying to say,
Right.
like, is there something that I can do to help clarify what isn't?
Yeah, and sometimes, for complete transparency, we'll have board members that have a desire to, elevate certain projects, or have certain initiatives that's important to them and their constituents that is heard and seen and incorporated into those plans. So this is where you can kind of put that in as well to make sure that you're always answering back to your community in a way that shows that you have, integrity and back to them as well.
Hi, can I say something?
Sure.
I think when the rubric was developed, the intention is really for it to be tailored specifically to your district. So if district priorities is too vague of a category, just recommend that you take it out, right? If every project is a priority, then that column can go away, and you can create you can prioritize the projects based on the other input variables that are there. It really is meant to be tailored by you as a board and as staff.
Thank you. I appreciate that, because I could see where it's useful when it's back when we were doing the, the Performing Arts Center or the pool or the CTE programs. And I'm just wondering how we apply it to this type of a list.
This is a very generic version of it. It's not meant to be a one size fits all. So I
Great.
think the
No, I
desire
appreciate
is
that.
you
Thank
really
you.
tailor it specifically to your district. Right, Trent? Should I not have butted in?
That's great. That's great clarification. Thank you very much for that. Okay, so trustees or staff, anybody else with questions? Okay, and Dr. Vang, you're feeling comfortable with direction, that where we are?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Okay, and I know, Dr. Vang, I know you and the team have worked very hard to get this together for us today. And I want to say thank you on behalf of the board, and I know everybody else feels the same way, of assembling all the team to be here, and all the documentation to go with it. And we know it's a little overwhelming, so bear with us. I know we've trustees, we've all been given the opportunity to meet with Dr. Vang one-on-one as well, to have follow-up questions and meetings. So please take advantage of that opportunity if that's something you would want to do. I can't think of anything else but to just say thank you. And we'll get through this. It seems, it's a big list, but we'll prioritize it and do what's best for the students and the staff of St. Helena. So unless there is anything else, I am going to ask for a motion to adjourn today's meeting.
I'll make a motion to adjourn today's meeting.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Miss Magical will conduct a roll call vote.
Trustee Wolf?
Aye.
Trustee Mora?
Aye.
Trustee Simon?
Aye.
Trustee Kerr?
Aye.
President Pelosi?